Schizophrenics of Reddit. What is the scariest hallucination, visually or audibly, that you have ever experienced? Paranoid schizophrenia here. My scary visions are usually in the early morning, but one time at around 2 PM I was standing in front of my vanity mirror applying makeup for the day. I started to hear the running of feet. Figuring it was my roommate at the time, I thought nothing of it. It wasn't. All of a sudden a figure busts in my room. It was about 4 feet tall, no arms, just legs, and was covered head to toe in dark blood-stained skin. Where its eyes were originally placed was just more skin folds. It ran around my room making barely audible grunts. If I had to think of a video game enemy that it looked like, I would say the cowman from the forest. That was my first visual hallucination, and afterwards I locked myself in the bathroom and cried until my husband came home from work. That almost sounds like the rocket demon from Doom. That also sounds terrifying. Holy crap. My grandma had schizophrenia her whole life, but never said peep about it until she was in her deathbed. Apparently, from time she was 3 years old to 80, she had animals with human faces scream profanities at her. She also had a little man who lived in her purse and stole her money. I am in charge of a program at a mental health agency that serves people with chronic mental health disorders such as schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, borderline personality disorder, and many more mental health diagnoses. We run group homes in which these individuals can live and work on skills to be as productive in their community and lives as they are able. The clients we serve are the most chronic in terms of their diagnosis and have severe and persistent symptoms. I have worked with clients that consistently see images in doorknobs and mirrors in which they are slitting their own throat, have paranoid hallucinations in which they believe a hospital planted a brain controlling and listening device in their brain because he knew that this doctor murdered the client's own cousin, and many more horrifying symptoms. On a lighter note, a gentleman we provide services to consistently hallucinates that he runs a strip club and he interacts with the hallucinatory strippers by yelling at them to get back on the pole, BTCH, and other colorful demands. My great-grandmother died because of her hallucinations. I was not alive then, but she apparently was not given the appropriate care and ended up living on her own. She locked herself in her house and was found dead weeks later. She apparently had thought people were out to kill her, so she armed herself and was so scared she didn't move. I'm assuming until she died. She was found with her legs basically pickled from the amount of times she wet and crap herself, and had downed quite a few bottles of whiskey. When her house was cleaned and sorted through, they also found dozens of stolen purses, with literally nothing taken from them. To me, that is the most terrifying way to die. So convinced that people are coming to kill you that you starve yourself to death while pickling yourself to death. My cousin, who is my age, also has it. She frequently believes that she is more than human, and has to go back to the hospital frequently from psychotic episodes. From what I glean, she hears spirits, and occasionally sees them. She also has so many suicide attempts it breaks my heart. It's hard to get close to her because, again, she sometimes thinks she is beyond human. When she is in that state, although not scared in any sort, she alienates herself to the point of suicidal tendencies. I'm glad modern days we have more of a solution for her. I don't want her to end up like our great-grandmother. I fear occasionally that I may have symptoms of it, but not to that extent. It's mostly during manic swings of my bipolar that I hear things and see things. I've never directly seen anything other than motion from the corners of my eyes, and I just hear inaudible whispers, but when it happens it comes with a massive overwhelming fear of impending doom, which is the scary part. Hearing whispers is okay. Hearing whispers and being confident that you are about to die, that adds a layer of terror to the whispers. To be honest, what I should do is stop smoking weed and eating mushrooms and playing psychedelics, knowing full well that this demon is in my possible genetics. TLDR, my great-grandmother died due to an unmonitored episode. My cousin has attempted suicide due to it. The terror is less of what you see, and more of an uncontrolled fear that you are going to die. So I guess the scariest hallucinations is the invisible, impending doom. You most definitely should stop. I'm schizophrenic, and to be perfectly honest, I don't want to think about it, but I will mention that for a long time many of my hallucinations involved extreme gore. Also, my scariest probably occurred at a time where I was heavily symptomatic, so it'd be hard to remember. Thankfully, I wish I could give a better answer. Just for future reference to any people dealing with people that suffer from hallucinations, there are a few things you can do when you're around them to help them out in general. Do not call for them from another room. Make eye contact when you're chatting with them. Remember that hallucinations involve any of the senses. Some people are more prone to auditory hallucinations than visual hallucinations, so just act sensibly and try not to provoke them. I only have psychosis, so not full schizophrenia, but I still have hallucinations and delusions. I'm a woman, and to be honest, both of my worst ones are pretty unbelievable because they sound so unusual compared to what you usually hear about in the media, etc. My worst hallucinations have actually been tactile, touch-based, so not quite what you're looking for, but there's a visual one also at the end which was very scary at the time. Tactile. I get this a few times a year, but 2016 was the worst. They began in 2014 where something invisible would climb into bed with me and spoon me. It progressed from there and it got a lot more handsy, but a round of antipsychotics got rid on them. In 2016 it came back majorly. I don't want to say it had sex with me because it's a hallucination. It's not real and there was definitely nothing visual, but something did happen. It only happened once, but for the next few days it would begin to touch me outside of my bedroom and during the day. At one time it pinned me against the sink while I was washing dishes. Kinda felt like a power play, almost like it's saying, look what I can do. I can get you anywhere I want. Scary crap. Another round of antipsychotics got rid of it. I'm dreading the next flare up. Visual. One night walking home from class at university, I was hit by a sudden dizzy spell that made my vision distort a bit. Then it felt like I was being pulled to look to the other side of the road where the woods was. There stood Slenderman. Needless to say, I instantly ran back to the house without looking back and didn't sleep that night. This one was probably the first thing that made me realize something wasn't quite right. The tactile stuff started when I returned home at the end of the school year. The Slenderman stabbing case happened shortly after this hallucination actually. I think it might have even been the same year, strangely enough. I definitely get the tactile stuff you mentioned. Oftentimes when I am in my bed and sometimes coupled with sleep paralysis. My girlfriend recently broke up with me and I actually thought it was her the last time it happened. The snuggling bit. I live alone now, so it fricked me up pretty good. Also have people tap my shoulder and whisper my name and ask me if I'm okay. Obligatory not me, but my aunt has paranoid schizophrenia. I don't know the scariest one, but the one that affected the rest of the family. After my grandpa died, her and my mom's father, she moved across the country to be with us and the rest of her siblings. One day she was supposed to come over and never showed, so my mom called her. She said there was a tiger stalking her outside her house, and she couldn't leave because it would eat her. My mom tried to reason with her because it would be all over the news if a tiger had gotten out from the zoo and there would be police everywhere. That turned into a massive fight between them, and my aunt packed up and moved back across the country without telling anyone. Not me, but my ex-boyfriend. He was diagnosed at a very young age, but never medicated. Doctors claimed it wasn't severe enough to medicate and he would probably grow out of it. He said his first hallucinations were auditory, just people calling his name. He'd be in a crowd and hear a voice very close say his name and would turn around and there was no one there. He was always reluctant to discuss his visual hallucinations. I think the whole topic made him insecure, but once when he was a child he saw dead people digging themselves out of the ground. He said he wasn't scared by it, because he was old enough to know they were hallucinations. Once I asked him what his most vivid hallucinations were. He said he was driving and began to see hundreds of white rabbits run out into the road. When cars hit them, the rabbits would turn into smoke. He said it was a very long hallucination that lasted for quite a few miles. He never fully grew out of it. Once or twice he would mention the twinkles when we were together. He would see tiny twinkling lights everywhere. Sounded kinda nice. I truly hope the fairy lights remain his only hallucination, if not his most common one. I have a reoccurring memory of killing someone with my car and hiding the body in my garage. This never happened and I have never had a garage. This was one of the first hallucinations that pushed me get help. Even after years of therapy and medication, I still occasionally feel the pressure and anxiety associated with the event, which never happened. Trust me when I say, I have researched and confirmed over and over that this didn't happen, even though it feels as real as eating breakfast this morning. Hey everyone, Schizophrenic here. I'd rather not specify a specific type. I'm diagnosed with the paranoid kind, but I do show symptoms of a few other types from what I can tell. Either way, my scariest hallucinations are the ones that make me feel like the fabric of space-time is ripping. I have a few that fall into that category. The most common one, which scares the crap out of me, is when I can see individual cells disappearing from existence, popping like balloons, not being replaced by new ones. I feel as though reality itself is dissolving and becoming a liquid substance, of sorts. It's as if everything is kinda magnified. I see much clearer when this is happening, which is unusual since my medication tends to blur my vision. Another less common one is feeling like everything in the universe is being drawn towards me involuntarily, being absorbed by my body and being unable to ever leave. I basically feel like I'm non-figuratively a black hole, which is terrifying and sad and oddly serene at the same time. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. I'm happy to educate. Not me, but a man I know. He told me that he was walking his bike past Goodwill and a group of teens bumped him and stole his wallet, then kidnapped him. All of the teens were celebrities, but he didn't know their names. They took him to the Flatiron Building in Seattle and spoke to him in the Tlingit Haida language, Alaskan Indian tribes, keeping him for weeks and implanting an organic computer in his brain so now he doesn't have to show it when he goes to the casino. After that, he went to Vegas and a demon took his hand and forced him down a dark hallway into a manhole in the street, with a door below that he knew led to heck, for which he blamed himself since he'd chosen to visit Sin City. I felt awful for him as he recounted all of this, and he was terrified about the Vegas part. Hoping to get through, I asked gently, "Now, you know none of that really happened, right?" And he just stared at me in confusion because of course to him, it all did indeed. Medicated paranoid schizophrenic here. Out of all the various recurring, excruciating delusions of pain, death, and extreme paranoia, few have come to scare me as much as this one. Buckle up, folks, I'm awoken, the night sky illuminated by a half moon. Outside my window, possibly a reflection, a face looks back at me, bearded, helmeted, looks kinda like those biker zombies from 7 Days to Die. To give a better picture, the face contorts and twists and turns and goes inside out, then back to normal. Looks like it's laughing now. Starts moving towards me, through the window. Now inside my bedroom, not 3 solid turds from my face, laughing. I scream silently, too afraid to make a sound, to even blink. The face hovers, menacingly staring deep into my soul, and shredding it to pieces. In a rare moment of clarity, I start praying to every god I know, from Jesus to Odin to Krishna to Osiris and back, begging for mercy. Please, anything but this. The face then loses its face, becomes a skull, a bastardized mix of human and cow that is hard to describe with words. It had horns. It was horrifying. I thought, I knew, I was going to die. This laughing skull was going to kill me. In a final act of malice, it crept towards me, staring deeper and deeper into my eyes, further shredding and searing my soul with its pure hatred. I closed my eyes for the first time in ages, and when I opened them, it was gone. Looking around, my alarm clock displayed 3:04 AM, the half moon a sideways frown, reminding me that I was in danger, that the skull, the face, it was sent here, to hurt and kill me. I didn't sleep again for another 2 days, and even then, I had almost collapsed from exhaustion. That's the end of that memory. As painful as it is to relive, it is important, because it reminds me of why I take my meds, to never be afraid of things like that again. A good friend of mine is schizophrenic and he once told me if he stopped taking his meds he would hear the voice of God telling him the only way to atone for all his sins was by taking his own life. He tried multiple times. Thankfully he's doing better these days. Throwaway account because I feel weird talking about it. I think I have something similar going on. It started about 3 or 4 years ago. I see vivid auras on people. Some examples are a vivid yellow-orange glow with distinct lines coming off the shoulders. Sometimes it's just around specific body parts, like an arm glowing purple. I've seen floating purple eyes in a star-like shape. Sometimes I can see a line coming off objects like a tree that goes into the sky. Sometimes I get vivid flashes of faces I don't recognize. There are a few other events that I feel like would make this post less believable, like intuitively knowing the contents of packages or knowing I'll find some old bottles hiking. It's more disconcerting than scary. I don't experience paranoia or mania, but I can't focus and occasionally am fond of pacing. I've debated seeing a professional regarding the issue, but I haven't. I'm late to this thread, but it's helpful talking about some of these issues. I've had a reoccurring figure since my episodes first started. When I was younger, I would hear brief whispered statements like hey or look. The first time this specific voice turned into a visual sensation, I was around 13 years old. I was reading in bed and I heard a whisper saying stop that kept repeating louder and louder to the point of screaming. Slowly coming into my field of vision was a woman in a white robe, a disfigured bloody old face and mangled hair. When she was fully there, the screaming stopped. It felt like an eternity of being unable to look away because I was petrified. My eyes just kept watering. After a few minutes I was able to snap out of the trance and she was gone. I've struggled with other episodes, but this is one of my few reoccurring terrors. In school she would appear in class. I'd be out with my friends and she'd be in the road. I'd be at work and she's just there. It's caused issues in relationships because I have a hard time admitting I go through with this. A month ago I was visiting my ex-girlfriend at her dorm, and I woke up paralyzed with fear because I was experiencing an episode but couldn't reach out for help. Sometimes I worry that I'll have to deal with this alone until I can't handle the dread anymore. I have mixed state bipolar Asperger's, which sometimes has gone on to full-blown psychosis. It's difficult to separate the things which are hallucinations and which are synesthesia, but either way the effect can be scary. For example, once on the ground floor of a hotel I heard piano music coming from the lounge, but as I got closer and closer the music turned into what it really was, which was a guitar and drums. I hear human voices and static, like the white noise of any computer. Even a light bulb that is loud enough for me to hear it will sound like two people arguing. When I close my eyes I see fractals and kaleidoscope imagery until it fades to black and I begin to see flashbulb images of things I saw since I last slept. When I hear certain sounds I get mental images, colors, shapes, emotions. When I was in early stages of psychosis I heard a commercial for Windows 10. I whipped off my feet like Charlie Brown and started screaming because the sound effect they played in the beginning of the commercial made me see 7 blinding lights that looked like they were going to crash into me. There is lower level hallucination type stuff, like being convinced every man on earth is trying to kill me, or taking a sign that said exit to lobby with a pointing arrow to mean something more like please leave the building before attempting to lobby for anything, wherein lobby means to make an argument, leaving me mute while I could still see the sign. I am also bipolar and a synesthete. I see those closed fractal kaleidoscope imagery when I close my eyes, too, but I have never heard of anyone else seeing the same thing till now. Thank you for sharing. When I didn't recognize myself in the mirror, I was looking at myself, and I started to have these weird thoughts about if I was the person I thought I was, and how I could be sure, since most of the time I'm not sure what I see is real anyway. That spiraled down until finally I didn't even recognize who I was in the mirror. I knew I should know the man there, and I knew it was someone close to me, but I couldn't grasp that it was me. I didn't know who I was. I thought I was just a figment of what my mind told me I was, that all the voices were right, that I was nothing. This post interests me so much because I have a sibling that was diagnosed with schizophrenia when she turned 18. It was pretty bad for my family, especially my mom, because we had no idea it was even a thing that existed. Basically the last 10 years she's been in and out of mental health centers. Usually when she has episodes she hallucinates that my mother is sleeping with her boyfriend, doesn't have one, and she can hear them having sex through the wall, and when that happens she gets really violent and tries to basically murder our mom. What really amazes and confuses me is that a lot of people are here that have the mental illness and they know they have it and are aware that what they experience was not real even if they realized it later. My sibling says that nothing is wrong with her and we just hate her and want her to stay locked in a mental health center. She has hallucinated voices talking to her from a radio and really weird things like sharks living in her stomach and eating her unborn baby, not even pregnant. Again, I always wonder how come my sibling never acknowledges that she has schizophrenia and thinks all her hallucinations are real but others can talk about their experiences. Not schizophrenic, but do experience hallucinations. I hear my grandfather calling my name and laughing from the room he was in last before he died. It's not like a noise that could be mistaken for a voice. I hear it loud and clear, and it actually sounds like it's coming from that room. When I go in the room, though, I can't hear it anymore and it frustrates me. I also can see him walking around in the living room when the lights are off. One night I remember looking downstairs from the top of the staircase and seeing him staring up with lifeless eyes that were sunken in. When I tried to turn back around, he shook violently before falling to the ground. Very traumatizing to see a few weeks after his death. I suffered a lot from hallucinations when I was a teenager. My dad is schizophrenic and I've been told by doctors that I inherited it from him. I remember having hallucinations about a pair of incredibly long arms. They looked like they had been stretched into deformity by some sort of torture. The skin on the arms had been ripped off, the nails too. Sometimes the arms would look like they had been made up of other organs. One time they were covered in what seemed to be the dead skin of intestines. The arms would appear out of dark areas at any time of the day. They moved like snakes, but also like they were examining the surroundings, sorta like a blind person feeling their way through a room. Whenever the arms got close, I would hear faint moaning, like that of a person in serious, but it was mixed with animalistic growling. Not schizophrenic. I was in the hospital in the worst pain of my life, so naturally they give me a morphine drip. I had never had anything stronger than ibuprofen, so I had no idea what to expect. I started having a visual hallucination that the ceiling had literally dropped down and was only like 3 inches away from my face. I was laying in my hospital bed in a panic thinking I couldn't sit up, so I got all claustrophobic and absolutely lost my crap. It doesn't sound so bad, but it was horrifying. I felt like I was pinned to my bed, trapped in the little box. The worst part is that I know it wasn't real, but when I remember it I can still feel that anxiety I had, like it really happened. I had amphetamine psychosis, which is indistinguishable from schizophrenia. I thought people were coming to get me as punishment for not taking amphetamine. How would they know that I hadn't taken any? Why would they want to hurt me? I didn't know, but I had such a strong conviction that I didn't feel safe in the house. It was a living nightmare, and I had a delusion that everyone knows how they will die, as if it gets revealed to them poetically in life and that we're not allowed to talk about it. I believed I would be murdered. I came to this conclusion after believing that I was being watched by a man outside my window in the bushes while I just sat there for hours. There was no man in the bushes. I was staying up for 5 days at a time, and it took me about 10 months of abstinence to recover from the delusions, anxiety, and depression. Lawyer who represented the mentally ill. I had a client in his early 20s who refused to open his eyes. He would keep them shut tight no matter what. The reality he saw was so overwhelming. Many people with mental illness have issues with their eyes, so much so that it leads to self-harm. One patient used to aerosol spray can to make blowtorches and burned out his eyes. Now imagine the terror that you would have to perceive to make you take such an action. At least for me, the delusions are far scarier than the hallucinations. Insects and shadow goblins are freaky, but not as bad as being convinced that your loved ones are all dead or that the government is following you. Once, my reflection in the mirror started moving on its own and talking to me. It was deeply evil. I was like trapped in my own body, unable to take my eyes off that being in the mirror. Sometimes, I feel a presence in the bathroom and I know the being is back. I avoid looking at the mirror at all costs. If I ignore it, it eventually leaves. Schizoaffective and bipolar 1. I've had a lot of mild to somewhat severe ones when I was undiagnosed. Stopped taking my meds, so I'll only highlight the 2 worst episodes. My first visual one was when I was 14 and undiagnosed. I was up late talking on the phone with a friend when I hear tapping on my window. I look over and there is a completely glowing white hand making weird hand gestures and grabbing at the air. I freaked out and ran downstairs to tell my parents someone is breaking into our house. Here's the kicker. My bedroom was on the 3rd story. My dad went out to investigate regardless, but they just brushed it off as a bad dream. I also have night terrors. When I came back into my room, things were quiet for a while, but about an hour later, the hand was back. But this time it was flailing around like its body was being violently shaken. Just horribly shaking, waving around. I slept in the bathroom that night, needless to say. Months later I was diagnosed schizoaffective and bipolar 1. I thought back to that night and realized it was a hallucination. The one that messed me up the most was after I got an abortion. At first, I was emotionally okay with my decision because I was suffering from a severe alcohol addiction and my family has a very bad history with postpartum psychosis. I've read too many articles about tragic cases of mothers suffering postpartum psychosis, hurting, murdering their children, and I am convinced I would probably harm myself or my future child somehow. Having children is a risk I am not okay with taking. But 2 nights after my procedure, I was sitting in my apartment. I lived alone, and I hear faint crying. I thought it was a cat or kid outside, even though it was 2 AM. I walk over to my window and see nothing. Then right behind me, I hear a little girl's voice sheepishly ask mommy. I spin around and see a millisecond flash of a little girl wearing red with short black hair. It was like a camera flash. Popped up then gone. I stood there in shock for a second, then began bawling uncontrollably. I am still dealing with that hallucination to this day. I felt a lot of guilt and self-hatred over my abortion after that, but I try and tell myself it was the right choice. I'm currently on a good antipsychotic, Rexulti, so I haven't had hallucinations in a while and I've been feeling a lot more stable than I ever have before. Had a very close friend that was schizophrenic. I knew that he went to the mall a lot, but at first I didn't think much of it. One day when he was having a good day, I asked what he did there all day. He would walk around the mall with his headphones and music on. As he was doing this, he's reading the mouths of people that walk by. But he isn't actually reading them. It's his hallucinations that make him think that these people are talking to him. When he's reading the mouths, it's God sending him messages through these people's mouths. Every message has something to do with his life and making decisions and even playing into more delusions. I know it was probably even more complex than I can even imagine, but he honestly believed this. Sadly, my friend walked off the roof of the home he was staying at last year. He believed that God gave him powers to fly. It was sad knowing that he died like that, but a part of me knew that he was finally free from his mind and he's in peace now. 19 and apparently started developing schizophrenia when I was 18 last year, but the scariest one I had, I was peeing and someone yelled "Who's there?" and I live alone, so I freaked out and couldn't tell. I didn't know I had the disorder, so I thought someone was in my home and I couldn't leave the bathroom for fear of being hurt. And just ones where they tell me to kill myself or kill other people. I have some visuals, but only when I relapse hard. The worst one was I turned around in my bed and there was a pale woman and I looked and she dashed away, and she was so vivid and she kept bothering me all night. I tried to draw her but I couldn't get it right. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.